Good morning. We'll call this morning's meeting to order. First thing on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
And move.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Just one thing on the agenda, the consent agenda, I guess. There was a donation from the Sabin Elmwood firefighters for $1,000 donation to the work details supply. Very nice donation, so appreciate their donation to the work that were, must have been some supplies they ordered or whatever. Appreciate their donation. Any citizens to be heard? You have anybody, Steve?
Do not, Mr. Chair.
You said no or you?
No, Mr.
Sorry.
Chair, sorry.
Okay. Approval of the bills and vouchers.
Move for approval.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve the bills and the vouchers. Any discussion on them? All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes for April the 4th. No. Oh, I got minutes here. Oh, there was correction on the 28th, okay. Approval of the minutes from April the 4th, excuse me.
Move approval.
Second.
You get a motion and a second to approve the minutes from April the 4th. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, before we get into that, we'll get Gabe and Justin here for give us some sort of report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I'll start off. Justin is really, the Highway Department has really kind of been the busy ones here the last week and a half. But as you know, last week we really started having stuff open up in Clay County, down in the southern part of the county when the south branch of the Buffalo River started flowing. A lot of those drainage ditches, watershed ditches and stuff that feed into the south branch were overflowing, going over their banks, and really needed a lot of work. So I really need to just thank Justin, Highway Department crew, and then also the Buffalo Red Watershed District. They brought in several different contractors, and they've been working pretty diligently to open up some of those ditches and responding to people's calls, that had issues that would pop up, and they would send a crew out there to assess the situation. And if they determined that it was a blockage or something like that in a ditch or a culvert, they would get some heavy equipment over there and clean it out. So really happy. Last week we did start our operating the flood hotline number, and I received last week many calls on it. I was pretty busy manning that phone last week. This week it slowed down a little bit. We did distribute about 11,500 sandbags to some of the different townships, and which they distribute out to who they feel fit, or people that need them. Our deputies, sheriff's office, have been pretty busy, especially at night, just receiving calls for service that are flood related. A lot of it is just people reporting road closures and things of that nature, which again, Terry over at the Highway Department deserves a big kudos. She has been updating the county's road closure map that is really up to date. She's very good at diligent even over the weekends and at night, getting that thing up to date. So I know our emergency services rely pretty heavily on that, and the citizens, just to find out which roads are closed. But our deputies responded to, just since last week, 22 calls for service that are flood related. Like I said, most of them are people reporting road closures. A lot of other ones are homeowners with questions and stuff, and if the deputy couldn't answer it, they directed them to myself, and if it needed Highway Department or Watershed District to talk to them about some issues, I would put them in contact with those folks, even if it was after hours. So it's been a busy week. Things, like I said, things have slowed down this week a little bit. For the bulk of the water, at least, that was kind of in the south branch of the Buffalo, has now made its way north, and I would say probably there's still some water down in the Rusted area, some ditches that need to open up to kind of release that, but the bulk of the issues we're having right now, I would say, are kind of in that Cragness, Georgetown, just east of Highway 75, that northwest corridor of the county. A lot of roads underwater up there. A lot of farmsteads that are surrounded by water. Driveways are maybe going under a little bit. So yesterday I spent quite a bit of time up there. This morning I drove through there again. I would estimate that the Buffalo River at Georgetown has probably risen about 2 feet since yesterday. I see it's actually crested at the Dilworth Gauge, which would be by Concordia Church, just off of County Road 11. So it's dropping. It's just, I think there's some water being held up for culverts and things like that just aren't open yet. And as the red can accept more water now, hopefully by the end of the week, we'll see some relief up there. But other than that, our deputies last night, we did have one individual, it was driver error, that ended up in a flooded ditch. They weren't hurt, they got out of their vehicle, but they proceeded to watch their vehicle sink. So that was down near the Convent Road off of Highway 75. But other than that, we haven't had any serious calls where we had to deploy assets as far as boats or anything like that. But just to kind of reassure you guys too, the Department of Natural Resources does have an airboat and a low water John boat staged at the Highway Department building here, and they've got COs available to operate those. And the Sheriff's Office also does have a boat available in Moorhead Fire. So, any questions for me before I turn it over to Justin?
Just an opening the dishes. I guess I talked to Justin about it on Saturday. I guess when we open up those township ditches and the watershed ditches is not open, we causing a problem. I mean, the customer to call me, I mean, it caused them a problem because the water wouldn't flow away. I mean, because we opened the township ditches, he got the water into his area, so he was concerned about that. And
Sure.
I drove out there again yesterday, and it looked like it went down a little bit, but not much. But I don't know if the watershed is not doing anything about opening up their ditches.
I did forward that ditch onto them. The ditch that we opened up, if we wouldn't have opened that up, that guy he was already getting water in his garage, so I think he would have been definitely flooded had we not opened that ditch.
Okay.
And it is tough because that entire section north of there was underwater, so I don't think the little bit amount of water that we added definitely, I don't think caused the ultimate issue he was receiving. And we did open their pipes too, so the water could at least get past them. Normally, we wouldn't open ditches on a township system, but being we knew this was gonna push more water that way, we did open those specific driveway culverts.
Did you talk to him at all, or?
I talked to one of his neighbors when we were out there cleaning that ditch.
Okay, thank you.
I will say that I've been on the phone with both of you a lot in the last week and a half, and to your concern, there was a lot of coordination to make sure that if we were opening something, we wanted to let the watershed know. We did give hot point locations to the watershed ahead of time and said, because there is some new leadership there, here are the areas that it's going to flood, and this has to be opened first, and whether they decide to go forward with opening those first, I mean, you just can't do it. But I will speak to the effort to open ditches for people that are flooding is imminent. That was the highest priority, and I know Wednesday when it kind of started with the South Branch flooding, that really was, yes, yards may go under, but we were trying to protect structures at all costs.
Was the watershed opening any ditches, or?
Yep,
They are, okay.
I think we had a call this morning. I think they have 2 crews still working, or
Yeah. So last week they had, I think, 5 crews at the height of it kind of working. They still got a couple today. They did, I think it was ditch 10, and there was a couple ditches they were working on today. But there's, obviously if I would say to the citizens, if there's issues, call in, and like I said, the Highway Department or Watershed will send a crew up there or someone up there to kind of assess the situation. And there's a bit of triaging that has to go on too, because, there's just so many ditches and so much water around, they kind of have to decide, what needs immediate, like Commissioner Mojo had said. It's more prudent probably to open up a ditch that's going to maybe save someone's house from going under versus someone's driveway from going under or something like that. So there is a bit of triaging that has to happen, and it's just because we don't have the crews and the manpower to open them all at once.
Okay,
Frank?
yes.
Yeah,
Gabe or Justin, you mentioned up north, Agnes in the Georgetown area. That's, in the past, that was been a big problem, like with County Road 26, and it would then flow over and go over Highway 7. We're not talking about situations like that this year, are we?
I
Yeah,
don't think
no.
so. So that area, I've been watching that area, the water's not even close to going over County Road 1 or 26 in that area that coulee goes through. Once-
Well, and the cooling, then it also crossed 26 over by 9 that we talked.
Yeah. No, those look pretty good so far.
Okay.
And I don't, again, Justin can probably speak more to it, being the engineer, but I don't anticipate that stuff, just looking at kind of what's left around there. Yesterday I saw a really neat success story of a mitigation project that the highway department would have done back in 19, where they actually did an overlay on one of the gravel roads that traditionally washes out, and the water is flowing over that area beautifully and not washing out the road. So, they say that for every $1 of mitigation, you're saving $7 worth of having to repair in the future, and that was definitely a prime example of that. So it was really neat to see that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just want to thank you, Justin, for your response really quick for the couple of calls I got. Obviously, one to the south and then one on the south side of Moorhead. So, thank you.
And I guess just from the highway department perspective, down in that Barnesville area, we have started opening some roads back up, been taking pictures, starting to fix them. Obviously, with the FEMA process, we need to make sure we document everything. So if a resident does call wondering if a road's not underwater anymore, when we're gonna open it, we just need to make sure that we follow that process. Otherwise, we will not get reimbursed if we don't have everything followed.
Okay. Any more questions, or?
Can I make one more comment?
Sure, go
It's actually just on, this week is Severe Weather Awareness Week in Minnesota, and I just want to remind you guys, and then anyone who may be watching, that on Thursday in Minnesota is Tornado Awareness Day. So at 1:45 p.m. and 6:45 p.m., sirens will be sounding just as a test throughout the county. I know the county is participating in it, so county buildings at 1:45 will have our tornado alarms going off in the building.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your report. And thank you for your work that you're doing. Okay, with that, we'll go into the Feedlot program. Gabe, you want to take care of that one for us?
Morning.
Morning, Gabe.
I'm requesting approval of the Feedlot annual report for 2022, so we are back in good graces with the MPCA now, so they've signed
Okay.
off on everything, and I think it'll be good moving forward from now, so.
Very good. So what do we have to update? Did we have to update something from last year, or did they just correct the records, or?
So Craig had to go redo the inspections he did from 2021. Everything was done correctly out in the field, but just the reporting, working through the MPCA reporting system, it wasn't, I guess, exactly how they wanted it to be reported. So he redid those and then did the 7 inspections for 2022. And everything has been entered correctly, and
Right.
Go ahead.
Well, Commissioner Kavanaugh can speak to this too, but, this is really a resolution to an issue that had come up. We did have a couple commissioners on some meetings to make sure that we just got it straightened out with the reporting, and thanks to the staff for really putting in the extra time that it did require. In the end, it really does show that we are doing what we needed to. It just really was technicalities in the reporting, so thank you, Gabe.
Good, Paul.
Yeah, and Gabe, maybe just for a moment, I want the public to know, as far as the feedlot officer, would you just give a brief background, how you worked with Craig prior, and then your steps forward into this position?
Sure, yeah, so I helped Craig with the computer system. Their reporting system is not very user-friendly, so Craig struggled with the reporting system. So I would help him with that stuff, and I've been kind of involved with him in doing some of the inspections, so when he retired, it was just a good fit for me to kind of move into that position. And with me growing up on a dairy farm, I kind of have that background, so it was a good fit for me to move into the feedlot officer.
Thank you for getting on board there.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay, I guess we need a motion to approve the feedlot report.
So moved.
Okay, got a motion to approve the feedlot
I'll second.
and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you for your report. Okay, next thing we got civil engineer preliminary design services for DMV project. Joe?
Yes, good morning.
Morning, Joe.
So the DMV committee has been working with Klein McCarthy just to do preliminary brainstorming on what type of a building we would need in the future. And we determined that it would be helpful for Houston Engineering to assist Klein McCarthy with determining what type of a site we would need to put a building on. So then we can ultimately decide where this proposed building could go. So I reached out to Mike Love from Houston Engineering. He gave me a proposal not to exceed $6,000, and he had indicated to me that if we start narrowing down, that this could probably drop a little bit, this price. But I guess that's what our committee is requesting, that we hire Houston Engineering to do this. So, questions or?
Yeah, part of the discussion that we had too, a lot of it, it's more than just, plucking the building down on a piece of property and determining your parking lot. But right now, we've heard from the state that the state wants to come back and be part of our facility, new facility when it's done. And where that adds to the problem is with the semis. And so we needed to make sure that wherever we end up going and decide to do, we need to know what the traffic pattern would be for potential semi. There's not a lot of them, it's like one at a time, but still how that would work. And then also then being able to help determine what additional costs is that adding to that facility that is for the benefit of the state, so that we can incorporate some sort of compensation piece of that. So I know, I think he made a comment that could be, that 6,000 could do as many as 3 sites. We have one site that we're more focused on right now than the others. And, so if that's the case, I think that number would probably not exceed $4,000.
Correct.
And then it's just a matter of how it would tie in with the current traffic patterns in that area. So it's something that certainly our building committee that was looking at this determined that was important to move forward on.
Go ahead, Paul.
Just more questions. So with this potential state involvement, I mean, how long do you go in your planning efforts? When do you, at some point, you need a commitment from the state?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think what, in terms of the structure itself, that is currently being designed for our needs, and ultimately what we would probably be looking for from the state is like a square footage number, just in terms of additional shell that would need to be constructed. And then what would go on inside there for their fit up, that would be their responsibility. And then the other thing that we have to determine is how that might work with shared areas, whether it's restrooms, those types of things. It might alter where those things would go. So I think the plan is with or without, but certainly Lori Johnson has indicated to us that the state is very interested. I will point out that she also said it's very unlikely that they'll bring capital dollars to it. However, she feels that can be, we can make up for that in some sort of a lease deal that would pay that share. So I hope that answers your question.
I think they'd have to be involved in the parking lot area also.
Right.
Whether we get the semis on the parking lot or in the street or wherever. There's
Yeah.
gotta be some room for to bring the semis in.
Yeah, if the state's not there, we don't have the issue with the semis.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think Lori's reached out to the state and is trying to see if they can make it to the next design meeting on April
Yeah.
24th, so.
And I think we got another meeting scheduled at 1 o'clock on the
24th.
Yeah, April.
24th. Thank you.
Mr. Chair. I have a question based, maybe more of a policy about what the new facility would look like. We've all been part of discussions talking about how the lack of state availability or testing availability for the state level issues are. Curious if it would be helpful maybe for your committee to outreach to Senator Kupek or our representatives Keeler or Joy, just to reiterate the importance of having those services here, definitely broadened. It is a financial, physical, all sorts of hardship for folks to have to go to Brainerd or Alex or Detroit Lakes to do those services. So maybe to have a conversation with them to let them know about the opportunity might help the state come to a decision to join us at a new facility.
We can certainly incorporate that. I know we have been talking about testing overall, but I know what you're referring to as, a lot of the first-time drivers testing and stuff like that. There's parents that are just having to take their kids, 50, 100 miles away to get their test done because there's inadequate
But
availability.
even for CDL testing, we've heard from businesses that it, that's like a 8-week process really to get guys or people scheduled, so helpful conversations.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I would move approval of the funding for the engineering work by Houston Engineering, I'm sorry, yeah.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the contract with Houston Engineering. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, Justin, we're back again to purchase
Yeah, so I
or
know
sell
that.
a unit.
Purchase and sell a unit. So I know the last thing we want to think about is snow right now, but, so last fall, we purchased a used snowblower from MNDOT that mounts on the front of a tractor, and we had really, really good luck with it, and it's a really heavy-duty unit. And MNDOT is actually selling 7 more of them, so we'd like to buy an additional one to replace our unit 167-1. So I'm seeking approval to sell unit 167-1 with a reserve price of $2,000 and approval to purchase a heavier duty snow blower from MNDOT for $10,000. So this, I do have money in my budget for this item, so it's well within my budget. We haven't spent any money out of this line item this year, so it's definitely something we can afford.
Thank you, Frank. So Justin, the 167-1, did that have any, I know you said that you can find room out of that budget line item, but is there any internal service money in that?
That one is not in the internal service
Okay.
fund.
Okay.
One thing we are looking at doing is this one and the one we purchased previously, I am gonna add them to internal service funds, so I think we put a 7 or 8 year life on the last one we bought, so we can replace them in the future. Because on a winter like this, we did use it a lot.
Jenny?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is one unit enough? Knowing how we've been more proactive to blowing problem intersections back, seeing how that's saved in time going forward, is 2 more?
So, well, this will be our second one, so we're gonna keep the one that we purchased this fall, and then this will be the second one that'll go in Barnesville on a tractor.
But that's, I mean,
And then we also have 2 payloader ones too, so,
so you feel like what you'll have with the 4 will be adequate?
yep.
Okay, thanks.
And do you have that second tractor?
Yes. So, and to Jenny's question, so we have 4 tractors. The 2 older ones we have, we'd only be able to rear mount these snow blowers, so in the future, I probably would look at buying another one when we replace those tractors and can front mount them.
Yeah. You know, I appreciate that it's rear mount, but that is also, you know, if you've sat in a rear mount snow blower for a significant amount of time, that's hard on your body. So I would, you know, appreciate us looking at those front mount for the group of guys that are going to be operating them.
Yep.
I think that, you know, Mr. Chair, I think this year, I think I probably received more calls regarding rural roads being blown in and shut than we have in a long time, and the only, you know, there was no place to put that. And the minute the minute your people would go out there, they would open it up, it would be the next time the wind blew, it was shut again.
Yep.
And the only way you can resolve that is to be able to get that away, or at some point in time, like Highway 10, where they've done snow fences, but we can't do that on 60 and 100 miles of roads. So I think it's money, I think this is money well spent. I think it's really beneficial to a lot of our people in rural areas that would just as soon not have to wait 3 days to get dug out. So I think this is a good purchase, and I would make the motion to move forward with it.
Okay, we've got a motion to approve the buying of another snow blower and the selling of one snow blower. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, okay, thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, opposed? Nobody, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Justin, going to Commissioner Mojo's question, do you suppose if we got two, we could get them for 5,000?
I wish.
Okay.
So I think they're selling 7 of them, and they sold 4 right away, and within 3 days, those ones were gone.
Okay.
So this one's coming out of wheat, and then we were able to go take a look at it, and they haven't actually listed this one yet, so we're pretty lucky to get it.
All right.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is to cameras. Gary and
Okay, good morning, Commissioners.
morning.
Okay, so the first item we have will be for some cameras that need to be installed into our facility. The Minnesota MCIT and the Sheriff's Association started a program for jail tours. These tours are conducted with Attorney Jason Hively. The tours are basically set up to be a kind of a risk management tour for your facility. There were 2 main areas that he felt that we needed to address. One of those areas that we're talking about today is installing cameras, which would fill in all our blind spots that we have at the jail currently. The blind spots that we're talking about would be in holding 3, 4, 5, and 6, and 7. Right. So we have cameras right now in our holding area, holding 1, 2, and 8, but that area is so volatile and kind of holds our high-risk type inmates. We need better coverage in that area. So that area tends to be where we would maybe have our overdoses, our suicidal attempts, and our severe withdrawals. So with that, the financial costs, we got quotes from the cameras, and the install would be for $24,495, and the electrical quote that came in with that is $8,700. This will be no cost to the county or the budget. We will use funds from the inmate welfare.
Questions?
Yes. Looking at this, I'm just going to make an assumption here that one of the headaches is always compatibility and retention of the video. Is this all compatible with the equipment that's already present?
Correct. Same company that's coming in. We're just adding cameras.
Does it, and just out of curiosity, does it coordinate with the body-worn cameras including from the road deputies? I mean, is all that one system or,
No, that's a completely different system.
okay,
Body cameras are another area which Mr. Hively said to clear up, but we'll deal with that at another time.
but do the detention personnel wear body worn cameras?
No, we don't right now.
Okay,
No.
well, just speaking for myself, I would be
Yep.
supportive of that. Moorhead finally got funded. I was glad to see that happen, but you will never hear objections from your field personnel about that once they've worn it for a week or two. All the crazy stuff they get accused of, and there's video there, they are some happy campers when they get vindicated with that. So I would think that'd be a very wise investment.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to approve the purchase of these cameras. Any further discussion? I guess my question was, I mean, which you're probably weren't involved in it then, why didn't we put these cameras in the first place? Or why did we skip 3 places or 4 places? Or is there an answer to that, or just,
I don't have one for you.
well, you weren't involved in the
Sorry.
thing, but seems strange, but whatever.
Mr. Chair, I would note, these cameras are right in front of your booking area,
Correct.
or the cells, or,
Yep. Holding cells.
yeah. And so, and I would note, would just like to thank Carrie and Katie and Sheriff Empting for bringing Mr. Hively in. I think it's an important step to make sure that, I know there was a great deal of planning that went into our facility. Having said that, I think this was a great thing to kind of close any concerns of liability, and also puts our inmates in the best scenarios when they're in those tough situations. So thank you.
Okay. Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the purchase of cameras. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, very good.
Okay, the next item we have is our GED program. About a year ago, we sat down with our programmers and we talked about all the programming that we wanted to bring in to the facility. Number 1 on our list was that GED program. With that, our programmers, Cassie and Tony have just done a remarkable job with that program and getting it to the point where we're ready to start this thing. So they've also trained themselves through a training program with the GED to become teachers themselves. They've really invested in the program. I got a shout out to the IT program too for helping us get set up and ready to go with that, with our laptops and so forth. We'll be running this in conjunction with the Moorhead Adult Learning Center. And we're basically ready to make this official. It's super important that we help educate these inmates. There's a 40% chance that they're less likely to return once they get an education. It helps to raise their self-esteem as well. With higher self-esteem comes better decision-making. And in turn, it just saves money for taxpayers in the end if there's less recidivism happening. Funding, again, for this, the program will be no cost to the public or the county. It's fully funded from the inmate welfare account as well.
Just to keep beating the drum, when we were, back in my former career, when we were trying to plan all this out and looking at what we wanted to accomplish, asking the public to pay a sales tax to build a correctional facility in an LEC, one of the things I repeatedly heard was that people need to realize these are human beings. They could be family members. They could be people that really matter to you that are going into this facility. And we have to treat them like human beings. This is such a big part of that. And for somebody to leave out of a correctional facility with maybe a leg up, maybe feeling like they're moving forward and they can go out and accomplish things in the community and work. We've got other things on our agenda today that contribute to that we'll hear from later. I'm just so proud that we have a system of corrections, probation, and that give people a shot. Because if they screwed up, that's one thing, and they have to be held accountable. But if they come out feeling like they've got a chance to move forward and not screw up again, we've accomplished what we owe to the public. So I want to compliment everybody involved in this for making these things happen. It's just great to see that we can follow up on the promises we made here a few years ago when we built the place.
Is there a limit in the number of days or months have to be in to get into this program, or?
No, and that's one of the logistical areas it's tough to start a program, but what's nice about this program is everything, it's online now. So if, let's say, one of our inmates gets treatment options, so they'll leave our facility, go to a treatment place, and they can continue their education there, as long as it's online. So even if, let's say they go from our county to prison, they'll be able to take that with them and finish it there. So they can finish it wherever they start here, they can finish it out in the public, at the library, wherever that may be, they can finish it.
Very good. Thank you.
And follow up to that, so it's an open start date then, pretty much, or?
So what we've done to get to the point where we're at now is we sent out questionnaires to all our inmates, kind of asking questions, how long you're going to be here, how long do you anticipate that you're going to be here, where are you going to be after this, where are they at in their schooling. Quite a few of them left off, maybe with like just 15 credits left. So what we did was, out of those questionnaires, we went with the 10 best candidates, and then they're tested. From that testing, we had to take the top 5 candidates who kind of fit the parameters of how long they're going to be here, and if they're going to go somewhere to another facility, because that helps these guys. They're more apt to obtain this degree when they're inside a facility than when they're outside the facility. So we're down to 5 candidates, and we'll grow that eventually, but right away with this kind of pilot program, we're going to start with just 5.
Okay, thank you. Really appreciate the work, and it certainly does have a lot of value. I really agree with the comments that Commissioner Evergreen talked to.
Okay, I take it this is for information purposes only, that you don't need a motion on this, or you need a motion?
I believe we do to use the inmate funding account.
Okay, very good.
I move approval.
Second.
Okay, you got a motion and a second to approve that request. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Curious on the amount of time and/or participants. I mean, what is the viability of that account? I don't want to overexhaust it. Certainly, we feel the priority it is an important priority to better the inmates. But
So financially, we're anticipating anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 a year
okay,
on that. There is plenty of money in the inmate welfare.
so it'll replenish itself.
It does, so that the inmate welfare account gets replenished from their commissary and phone sales and stuff, so.
Any further questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next one, Janelle, request to sign the 2023 STS contract.
Good morning.
Program.
Thank you for having me. Andrew Hansen, the STS crew leader, is actually out with a crew this morning, and so he was not able to make it this morning. I did forward the new STS contract. It is due. Our current contract ends at the end of June. There is no increase in cost, so it would remain the same that it has been the previous contract. The contracts run 2 years at a time. And just to give a little update for the crew, we've had Andrew Hansen on board since August, busy with community events, setting up, tearing down, cleanup, some of the maintenance of county city parks. Most recently, they did assist with the sandbagging, which was a great event. I want to give some attention to the Correctional Center. They have been amazing at really looking at their population and who would be appropriate on an ongoing base. The communication is at a very high level, interacting with each other and letting our crew leader know how many members, asking questions, and just making sure that there is a good-sized crew available each day, and we're very appreciative to that. And so most recently, during the sandbagging event, also want to give a shout out to JT Lawn Service. They provided not only some equipment, but when I went there, they were on site. Some of their staff was on site, and they had some really amazing comments to make about the crew, and they brought job applications for the crew, and we're talking to the crew about, future possibilities and things like that. So it was just a really good feeling, and really the philosophy of the STS crew was really highlighted during those times. So very much appreciative of that, and I am hoping that Clay County is in a position to sign a new contract and continue this adventure. We only hope to do bigger and better things. I think as time goes on, the Department of Corrections is looking at dosage supervision. They are piloting it in a different area. Part of dosage supervision lends to individuals being on a crew, which would give some of that incentive to those that are in the community that otherwise don't participate on the crew. So that would enhance some of our crew member size from the community. Otherwise, we generally get the members from the Correctional Center. So just wanted to highlight that. The state does provide all the equipment. We have been approved to get 3 new lawnmowers for this upcoming summer and future. So that's kind of where the crew is at. I am available if you guys have any questions. Otherwise, I believe the contract was sent through DocuSign to County Administrator Steve Larson. And so I would just be asking for approval for him to be able to sign that through that.
Do we ever run out of money on this program, or,
It is jointly funded, currently 75% by the county and 25% by the state, and we have not had any issues with funding.
okay.
The dosage model, are we just being considered for that, or is that something we're going to be able to anticipate?
Right now, it is being piloted in one of our districts. And they also are piloting some other things with that, and so I should know more about it probably within a year. The pilot project itself is about a 3-year process. They really want to enhance the number of staff and do things the right way, and it also lends to funding for field services, which right now is kind of up in the air. But Moorhead, Clay County is on the radar of the Minnesota Department of Corrections in the area of homelessness, the rate of criminal cases coming through our court system. And so it is a high need. I've asked them also to keep on their radar the possibility of, they call it, what are they calling it now? It's to reduce recidivism and working with the local jails. And so kind of sharing that the department would invest in beds as long as there was programming. So I get excited hearing Carrie talk about the GED program, and I know they have the mental health stuff, and Clay County is in a really good position for the state to partner with them and share some of those expenses to really look at reducing recidivism within the community.
Yeah, all the AMC meetings, everywhere you go, you hear people singing the praises of our juvenile facility and of our jail, our correctional facility. And I really hope we can take advantage of that to get programs that give people a decent start, and get them healthy and clean and employable. And the correctional facility can actually be part of that process. But it really intrigues me if we could offer incentives for people who are community-based, being punished, doing their time that way, which is what we're moving towards, to actually have them doing something productive and even expose them to possibility of jobs. So, good work, and I hope you keep us posted on developments.
Thank you.
Is there just one crew, or are there two crews that go out?
This pertains to the STS crew that is with the Minnesota Department of Corrections. And then the Correctional Center has a work detail crew, and that is separate.
Okay, so we have two crews that go out and help out?
Yep.
Is there requests for more crews, or?
No, it would just be the two. I believe the Correctional Center crew, they are considered still in custody, so they may be a little, they're not high risk, but they're higher risk than who come out with the STS crew that is state-run. Ours are minimum risk, and they are able to change out into their street clothes. And so there's kind of a different level of the two different crews, and they often work together, and at times they look to just meet the needs within the county, so they will separate out, divide and conquer. But they have a good partnership.
Very good. Okay,
Mr.
thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to support this.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to support the program.
I just had a
Any
comment.
further discussion? Yes.
You know, we've had lots of discussion, certainly through COVID when it was more challenging to get those crews out there. I think that the availability and opportunity for people to leave their mistakes behind them and have an opportunity to give back to their community is vitally important, not only for the community to see that, but also for their own self-esteem, and certainly supporting rehabilitative services like we have in so many different organizations, and social services is here. They can nod their head on that too, but to better address holistically all of the issues that some of these folks are going through. But certainly, I grew up in this community, and I recall as a young child seeing those crews out, giving back, and making our community better. And I think that really does stick with you, and you kind of leave maybe a stigma about what those people are and who they are, and kind of leave that behind, knowing that they're working hard to give back. So many kudos. Thank you not only to your crew, but also our work detail crew. I know it's different, but all serving the same purpose. So thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Any further comments? Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, once again, this is something, this county, you know, for what the 75% that we invest into this, the benefits that also happen just in the work that they do is very valuable. I'm really encouraged with what you just talked today about a Minnesota business having these people working and recognizing the good in them, and seeing and suggesting that they may have spots for them once they're ready. I think that's what this is all about. That goes back to what Commissioner Ebinger said a little while ago, is to get these people back on the right track and being good, productive people within our communities. And you just said it with what JT's, I think you said, was with what they talked about. And I think that's just excellent.
Yeah, it was really, really fun to see that. Just the belief and coming alongside, and that they were just in doing the work with them and standing with them and partnering, and just that engagement piece that I don't know that people, justice-involved people, always feel included or feel well-received, and for them to be a part of that project for Clay County and knowing how much that was needed for the county, coming away from it, feeling really good about the work that they did.
Well, the idea that we can educate our people in corrections and we can find opportunities for them to work within our communities, that beats them just sitting in a jail cell.
Right.
And everybody benefits, so
Yeah.
kudos to what you're doing.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to approve program. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Very good. And now to continue our series of weekly meetings with social services.
This
This is
is
episode number 4, I
definitely
think.
part 3 of our 3-part
Part 3,
series,
okay.
so. All right, Jackie's going to help me, assuming it's this one. There we go. Thank you. Thank goodness Jackie's here to make sure we're all set up. All right, yes, we are here for part 3 of our 3-part series of our various divisions. Today, you're going to hear from our Child Support Fraud and Collections Division, Sandy Thorne, and our Financial Services. So we have Jamie Stewart, and Karen Severson is our new supervisor that you approved to hire in 2023. Karen started in January, so we have been thrilled to have her. Karen has worked in the financial services unit for the past 7 years prior to being appointed as the supervisor. So it was a great promotional opportunity. She brings that direct experience in terms of administrative programs. So we've felt the difference already. So all right, so we're gonna just jump right in, and Sandy's gonna start for her division.
Good morning.
Morning.
Okay, so I supervise child support, welfare fraud, and collections. I have 16 staff in my unit, and we'll talk about each one kind of individually as we get in there. So starting with welfare fraud, we have 2 full-time investigators. Both positions are eligible for federal financial participation dollars at 50%, but we also get a state grant of up to $125,000. So we're only having to pay 50% of the difference between those 2 positions, which is awesome. We handle 2 different types of investigations. We do front end, which is called the FPI program, or fraud prevention, which is trying to identify at the point of application that we need to figure out, are these people actually eligible to receive benefits, and try and prevent them from being issued at the start. And then we do back-end investigations where we find down the road that something wasn't reported correctly and they were receiving benefits in error. The majority of our referrals do come from the income maintenance unit or the financial workers, but we also do sometimes get phone calls from outside staff, or in child support. We also can find people or situations that we think might need to be looked at. The majority of the cases are unreported income or employment issues and verification of residency. We find that being right across the river from another state, we have a lot of people going back and forth between the 2 counties, and so they find a lot of people over in Fargo that are receiving Minnesota benefits in error. Our program the program waivers that COVID brought really affected our numbers, and you'll see that on the next page. It reduced our referrals, but even if we found an issue, we couldn't really do much with it at that point. So this is slowly improving. So if we go on to statistics, I started at 2018, so you can see that on average, we were getting over 500 referrals a year in the FPI program. That reduced in 2020 to 366, and continued going down for the next 2 years. But we've already done 118 FPI investigations through yesterday in 2023. So I do think that the numbers will be going up again to more of a pre-COVID level. When we do an investigation, if we find that a grant should not go out, we calculate the amount of what the grant would be, and then 3 months out as a cost avoidance for statistical purposes for the state to show that we prevented, so in 2022, $379,000 from going out in error. So it's a very strong program. Clay County's been involved at the beginning. We were a pilot many, many years ago, and we have 2 really strong investigators that keep it going there. For criminal cases, that also has reduced with COVID and no hearings in the district court for a few years. But we are still working those cases, and those ones are a little more hit and miss on if you can get someone served, located, get the process going. But, yes.
If I may, just being I'm newer on this commission, what happened in 2019 on what would create 1.2 million in cost avoidance?
You know, a lot of that is just by a case. Medical assistance is huge, and that really can reflect the numbers. And, you know, one year we could have a case that had 50,000, and the next year we could have a case that was 250,000 because that person was really sick, but we find that they really weren't eligible.
Okay.
So it's the medical assistance that really affects that
Okay,
number.
thank you.
Yeah, and
Yeah, thank you. Sandy, on the FBI cases, you have this column where they're referred, so who's referring them?
Most of that is from the financial workers.
Okay, and is that, do you have other ways in which you monitor besides just referred cases?
Yeah, they get, what's that one report called?
annual household report form.
No, it's, Ives? Yeah, where they're comparing income. So you might get a reported income that we weren't aware of, that they would follow up on. But most of it is somebody calling in, or a financial worker or a child support officer saying, hey, something doesn't seem right here. We also can get them, there's a hotline at the state level.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say for context, again, a good share of these are referrals coming from the eligibility workers. So a person comes into our agency to apply for one of the state or federal public assistance programs like medical assistance, SNAP, cash grants. And the eligibility worker, something isn't matching right, or maybe there's some missed information on the application, or some of the matches are coming back not consistent. When the eligibility worker has concern for what's on the application and can't reconcile it with the applicant, that's when referrals then get made to our welfare fraud.
Okay. So moving on to county collections. We have 2 full-time collections officers, and they work on collecting debt for various departments within Clay County Social Services and other departments within the county. The vast majority is through social services, though. These positions are also eligible for 50% FFP. So they work with public assistance overpayments, and when we collect back on those, we do get a percentage of that back into the county. They work with foster care placements, probate and medical assistance recovery, county burials, detox. We also can collect for the highway department or environmental health.
How do you collect the county burials, or what do you mean by county burials?
That's for someone who has no assets to
Right,
pay
I
for a
realize
burial. So we get involved then. We've had situations where someone's come in and applied for a county burial, which has been approved, but then we find out that there was an asset that could have applied toward the funeral.
Okay,
So collecting that back.
very good, thank you.
Okay. So the collection officers perform a wide variety of duties. Some of the bigger ones are acting as a representative payee for kids that are in placement and receiving Social Security benefits. That is a whole crazy process, working with Social Security on those. They enforce probate cases where we have a preferred claim. You know, and that can sometimes be kind of contentious when you're talking about a large estate and very large medical assistance payments that have been paid out. And, you know, the family really is getting nothing inheritance-wise because the money's all coming back to the state. They do a lot of location, and then we can also file for revenue recapture for Minnesota taxes to be intercepted to repay debt. And then they also do several things for the child support unit, just because we wanted to separate buccal swabs for genetic testing from somebody who might be testifying in court for child support. And then they also monitor driver's license suspension and handle some judgment renewal in that area. Then moving on to child support, we have 6 full-time child support officers and 6 full-time child support enforcement aides. We provide a variety of services that I've put down here. I don't need to read it. I'll do it. Funding in this area is at 66% FFP, and we receive federal incentives based on statewide performance in different areas. And I have that listed out on the next page, but it's based on federal law for what we get there. So we do bring in revenue in the child support area, and for federal fiscal year 2022, we brought in $1,382,000 to help support the costs that the county has to have this program. In federal fiscal year 2022, we collected over $7 million. This is slightly inflated because of the COVID stimulus payments. And then that amount was split between current support and arrears or unpaid balances. We averaged about 2,454 cases. And our costs, for every dollar we spent, we collected $3.50. One thing that's changed a lot over the years is it used to be the majority of our cases were receiving public assistance benefits. Now, over 90% of our cases are not receiving a cash grant. And so anything that we are successful in collecting actually goes directly to the household to help support those children. And in Clay County, about 1/3 of our cases are interstate cases. Those I'll always throw a few more challenges in there because every state has different rules and regulations on what they can do. So we have a very high amount compared to other counties within the state. So child support by the numbers, showing federal performance measures and the state average. We've been struggling a little bit lately, and we're kind of identifying that might be because of that large interstate caseload. We have a number of cases with North Dakota, and their rules are very different from ours. And what we're finding is that we get cases to enforce for them based on their order. And if it was our order, we would modify it because we don't feel the person has the ability to pay, but it doesn't meet their criteria for modification. And so we're kind of stuck. We have these cases that we're charging huge amounts on that we can't collect anything on, and that's really affecting our numbers.
If this is a federal program, why is there different rules for North Dakota than Minnesota?
Oh, it's every state. Every state took those federal guidelines and tweaked it. So, you know, it's different state by state. I don't know at this point. The state is working, they have a work group that's talking about interstate issues, and I have several staff that are on that, to kind of see if there is something that we can do. We did meet with North Dakota Interstate about some of these issues, and, you know, they said, well, but, so you want us to have Minnesota rules versus what our entire state does, and, you know, we can't ask them to do that, and I understand that. But, yeah, we're kind of between a rock and a hard place on that one.
Maybe just for a border city.
I'm sorry?
Maybe just for a border city.
I'm assuming it's a situation where they have federal guidelines, where there's minimum guidelines that have to be done, but some can, it's just like in our planning, you can have some things where you have guidelines, but somebody can supersede our guidelines as long as they're more restrictive as opposed to less restrictive. And that's probably where it gets into with these different states.
Yep.
I'm sure they all have minimum guidelines they have to make, even whether it's North Dakota or Minnesota.
Oh, definitely,
Yeah.
yeah. So, and then I just listed out some of the changes we've implemented since COVID. The IT department has been just awesome in getting everybody set up to have the ability to work from home if necessary. And we do utilize a hybrid schedule in my unit. Out of 16 staff, I have 10 who are currently working every other day at home. So kind of a 50-50 in the office. And they're able to do their jobs. They're able to do everything they need to do with this type of schedule. We're much less face-to-face with clients these days, and I think COVID just kind of naturally brought that on, where we can do more and more through email, and we now have what's called Minnesota Child Support Online, where they can go into a program and send a message directly to their caseworker and get a response that way. Most of our court hearings are by phone, and we're finding that we're getting more participation by our clients by having this, because they don't have to take time off from work or travel to Fargo-Moorhead. You know, a lot of our people can't take an hour or two off during the day. If they need time, they have to take the whole day off from work, and that doesn't help anybody in losing that income. So I think we're successfully working under the new guidelines for hybrid work in the county.
Questions for Sandy? Complex work. They do an amazing job. All right, we will move on to our Financial Services Division, and I will let Jamie and Karen take it over. Hey, push the button there.
Move the mic up when you talk.
All right, so we're the Financial Services Division. We administer state and federal programs, cash grant programs, SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Programs, child care, medical assistance, emergency cash assistance, and the county-funded burials. I supervise what we call the family team, family-based programs, MFIP, which is the Minnesota Family Investment Program, which is federally funded. We service pregnant women, families with minor children, non-custodial parents of children receiving MFIP who are 200% of the federal poverty guidelines, family of 3, 2 children, 1 adult, no income, approximately $686 in cash, and $619 in SNAP. And within the last couple of years, we've stayed pretty steady in that program and expect it to go up in our numbers. The DWP program, which is a diversionary work program, during COVID that was suspended. They didn't have DWP. Since that has ended, we have seen an increase in that and expect to see that increase steadily. Jamie?
I'm currently supervising the adult programs and the healthcare programs. And with the general assistance is the cash for the general public that does not have any children. in the household. Typically, these are people who are ill or temporary ill or permanently ill and just haven't been able to receive Social Security yet. The average monthly benefit for individuals is $3 and for couples $260. Our numbers slowly increase with that program, and I guess I just think they'll continue to increase. MSA, the numbers have gone down some, and this is for the clients that are on Social Security, but they need a little bit of extra money to get through, and they meet the eligibility requirements to receive $81 for an individual or $111 for a couple. The Housing Support Program, which was previously the GRH program, the numbers have increased drastically, I feel, over the last year. And this was a program implemented in 1999. It's a state-funded program that provides at a minimum room and board for unrelated people who live in certain licensed or registered group living arrangements and who receive SSI or would be eligible for SSI except they have excess income and are blind, over 65, or disabled, and age 18 or older, or meet a categorically eligible under the GA program. We do have this pulled out right now where we have special funding through a grant where we have a worker that solely works on these housing support program cases, and as these increase, we will need to kind of divvy out the program so we have more staff working in that area.
Yep, I would just add, this is one of those areas. So in times past, when we've come before the board to talk about developments in our community, like individuals, like Commonwealth Development, they were submitting a grant to the Housing Authority to develop low-income, or I should say affordable housing, but we were setting aside so many of those units for housing support. So that's this link. Gateway Gardens, Bright Sky Apartment, we have housing support agreements with Churches United, multiple community sites, and as you can see, those numbers have just continued to climb. It's an area where the more we develop, the more this program increases as well, but it certainly is reflective of the need. As Jamie said, we do have a grant right now where we were able to kind of isolate a lot of this work with one worker, but it's not working, to be honest. It's too much. We really wanted to build an expertise with fewer staff because this requires a lot of community partnerships. So this is an area I'm hoping that there's some additional grant funds. If not, it may be a piece that we'll have to talk about in the 2024 budget to see if it's something that we can address. But it's a program fairly consistent around the state. This program has increased statewide as well. So
Is a lot of that due to aging?
I don't know that I get that sense that it's
Just curious.
no.
I would say it's more homelessness and disabilities that come along with the homelessness.
Now, we will, so Churches United has that Silver Linings project that they were looking to develop out by Bright Sky Apartments, and that is for people 55 and older. And if that project is built, it would rely on some of the housing support for that development as well, and that would be for 55 and older.
The next program we have is the SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. As you can see, those numbers are increasing quite rapidly as well, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the standards have increased, so more people have been able to apply and receive benefits, which also means our caseloads are increasing, especially on the adult team.
So is that showing that we've got almost 3,500 people on the SNAP program monthly?
That's cases, not people. That would be cases with multiple people on them. So we have 3,494 active SNAP cases.
So the number is, in terms of individuals, it's significantly higher than that.
Okay.
And then we move into the healthcare programs. those numbers are increased. I do, however, see that with the PHE ending and we're able to close clients again, due to other than death or move out of the state and request it, those numbers possibly could decrease, but I'm not sure at this time how many will. We'll figure that out over the next 14 months as renewals start again. Long-term care program, that has increased over the last year as well, going from 932 to 1,113. We currently have 4 staff working with those cases, and they're new staff in that department as we had other staff retire out. And they are doing a good job with it, and as you can see, they haven't cut back on numbers at all. So
this is, if you recall, let's see, last year or a year and a half ago, we came before you. We had 2 long-term employees that I think together had 70 years of experience, something like that. It was crazy. And we moved that administration of this program from 2 workers to 4 based on that increase. And so it's a good thing that we were able to do that.
the next thing would be emergency. Nope, childcare assistance, you're right. In the childcare assistance, Karen does supervise under the MFIP program and the basic sliding fee. These numbers have increased a little bit. During COVID, they were down, but they'll continue to increase, I feel, as families are getting back to work, utilizing the funding more. The emergency assistance program, this is state-funded cash grants for a household of single adults with no children in the household. And as you can see, during COVID, people utilized more of the COVID dollars rather than our general assistance emergency fund. So those numbers have increased, and they will continue to increase as we go along. And the same kind of is true with the family emergency assistance. You can see in those couple years of COVID, we were down a lot, and now that the numbers are increasing as we're not using the COVID dollars anymore for.
Yeah, and if you remember, there was rent help and Minnesota Rent Help or Help Now. So there are various programs out there that individuals could apply for, and CAP-LP administered a lot of those funds. So we knew we were seeing that decrease in reliance on our emergency assistance programs, both for families and individuals, and an increased referral to those programs. So now you're seeing that shift. Those monies are done, and individuals are coming back into the county for those needs.
The last one we have up there is the county burials, and these are all county dollars. As you can see, the numbers are increasing, and I can say this year we've had, I don't know the total number to date, but quite a few as well, so we're not looking to decrease that number.
Well, this is highlighted in statute what the county's obligation is for a county-funded burial for individuals who are indigent and meet those qualifications. So oftentimes we get referrals from the funeral homes or families directly for an application for a county-funded burial. And we look at assets, income, bank accounts, all those kinds of things. And so if there are no resources to fund that burial, then we approve that. And we have a rate structure that we've set with our funeral homes in terms of how they bill that. Unfortunately, in 2022, we had a large family that utilized the county-funded burials. And so the number's a little high there because of that large family situation. We budgeted for 2022, $130,000, and as you can see, our net cost was $202,000. So we're running over a little bit in budget there. I think I have $140,000 in there for the budget for 2023. So those continue to inch up a little bit and might be an area we'll have to look at in the budgeting process. But yeah, we've worked really well with our funeral directors.
What did you mean by a large family? Of it?
If you recall, earlier in the year, it might have been at the end of 2022 there was a large family that passed away in their home, carbon dioxide. And so I think that was a family of 6. That increased those numbers too.
Okay.
Then just some additional talking points is that we are currently fully staffed, which has been the first time since I've been employed here, so that is wonderful news. Hopefully we stick with the staff we have because we do have an incredible staff. There's 29 eligibility workers, 3 of them being lead workers. They're great people. We have been able to recruit some very knowledgeable and experienced staff, some from Cass County and Fargo. Others, I don't know that we've received any from other counties, but they have started coming over from Fargo, which has been great. We did start with the hybrid remote work also in October of '22, which has worked really well. We have some staff that take advantage of that and work 2 days from home, not 2 days consecutively, but alternating days. And that has worked well, and we don't have anybody that's fully at home, of course, but the way they can come in the next day and print and see their clients know their schedules, so it's been working really well. Since March of 2020, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, DHS has stopped most annual eligibility renewals and closures for people on medical assistance in Minnesota Care. Now these renewals are going to start back with the first group starting in July of 2023. So we're anticipating a lot of work to come into our agency that we haven't seen in a couple years, and also probably a lot of clients calling in unsatisfied with the fact that their case is closed. They've been on for 3 years and they don't understand that they're not eligible, and now they'll be closed due to not being eligible for the programs anymore. The state did approve $36 million to be allocated to the counties and tribes to assist with resuming these medical assistant renewals. They haven't told us a deadline of when this money needs to be spent by, and they also haven't told us how we can use the money. So until we get those guidelines, we really aren't sure what we can do with it, but we will probably be bringing you a spending plan and ask for approval on that once we have the information.
Yep, and I would just add that they're basing the appropriation to counties on our March 2023 enrollment numbers. They've got a formula in there, so I suspect in the next week we'll see what that looks like and what kind of parameters they put around those spending plans. Many counties are looking at if they can add additional eligibility workers to help with that renewal process, or help pay for some overtime costs should workers need to work extra hours to get the workload done. Maybe using the funds for some additional support staff or mailing costs or various things that will be needed to help us get through the renewal process. So more to come on that. And I think we noted already kind of the adult team workload increases, and it's an area that we're thinking we're going to need to do some adjustments on. We're working on moving from a case banking model to individual caseloads, which we're hoping will be helpful and better for our staff, but better for our customers as well in terms of having a direct eligibility worker versus a kind of a case banking model. So those are some areas we'll need to address kind of going forward. Other than that, any questions?
Mr. Chair, I have a few questions, and I want to educate myself a little bit more and maybe others listening regarding MA.
Okay.
Okay, and it kind of goes to something that Sandy talked a little bit earlier. So is the eligibility for that solely based on income?
Some programs have asset limits as well.
So, okay, some programs incorporate assets.
Yep.
But if you have a senior who is on Social Security living in their own home and that's their only source of income, would they be eligible for MA?
It really depends on their asset limit.
Okay.
The disabled do have the asset limit, and it would depend on if they're receiving Medicare and if they have to pay a premium for that and what the premium
Okay.
is. And sometimes we just reimburse for that as though it's cost-effective health insurance.
I guess my point is, I know that through collections, Sandy mentioned that you might have somebody who's been on MA for a period of time. And by the way, does MA pay all medical bills? Is there anything that they don't pay for somebody who's on MA?
There are things that won't pay. I guess off the top of my head, I don't know what those situations
Okay,
are.
but by
for
and
the
large,
majority of it.
the important medical
Yes.
things are paid for, okay? And so then, are all of those things dollar for dollar? Is that something if they have assets down the road, as you talked about, Sandy, or is that dollar for dollar then that the county on behalf of the state can go back and collect on their assets?
I believe so.
Okay,
We would find out the total amount of MA expended during that time period, and that's what we would look to collect back.
I guess the reason I bring that up is, I don't know if a lot of families who might have somebody, an elderly parent who's in that position or not, and to what degree their assets are at jeopardy of being subject to collections. And at what cost could that be happening? In other words, is there any other way that a family member who might be the recipient, upon death or something, that it might be in their best interest to help find another source of medical coverage that protects those assets? Do you follow what I'm saying?
Versus going on MA, yeah.
Hmm?
Yeah,
Versus going on MA,
yeah. Yeah, and another example is, so kind of where you're going, so say an individual is living in their own home and they need to go into a nursing home or assisted living. If their assets are too high for eligibility for a public health care program, they're what is called self-pay. I mean, they're paying their bill.
Okay.
And at some point, those assets may run out, and then we see applications come in for the healthcare programs.
Or they drop below
Drop below
a
the
minimum requirement?
limit. Yep. Another scenario is where Sandy's unit gets involved is, say an individual's utilized a public health program. Now, perhaps they've passed away and now there's a house that needs to be sold. Then that house is sold, those assets are considered, and that's a collection piece on the part of that. And it's tough to help families kind of understand that. And
I guess that's kind of why I'm
Yeah.
raising those questions here, that,
Right.
Are there instances where it might be beneficial for the family to consider helping invest in another source of medical coverage other than MA to protect what they've spent their entire life saving for?
Right. Yeah, and there's health plans out there that offer long-term, services and supports, and weighing that, cost of that versus medical assistance and perhaps, self-pay or recouping that. I think there's a lot of pieces that have to be weighed in the
Right.
decision.
It's complicated, I realize that, but.
Yeah. very much.
Then, now, how many, just out of curiosity, do we know how many people who would be considered seniors are on MA in Clay County?
We can get that number. I don't have that handy, but it's a large percent. It's a large percent. Would you know off the top of your head?
The percent of?
Yeah. So for example, the percent of that 17,000 individuals, what represents our elderly population? We can get that from our state reports. I don't have that handy.
And you can just
It's a
get
fair
that to me offline, I guess.
Sure, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
All right, thank you.
Thanks for the report. Thank you for your report again.
Over 3 weeks.
We'll look forward to the next series.
The next one.
Okay, we'll go on to committee reports. Paul, you want to start us out this week?
Okay, to start last Wednesday, I, along with Commissioner Ebinger and our host, Commissioner Mojo, along with Chamber Shannon Full and Mayor Shelley Carlson, had a business roundtable. I thought it was well attended. I think as many as probably you hoped, and I thought it was a good start. I'll put it that way, and I hope it was bringing collective ideas. Certainly elected people there from, again, the county and then also the city council. But having a chance to listen to business owners with their entrepreneurial and creative minds. What are ways that we can grow business in Moorhead, as well as how do we do that out in throughout our county? But some of the things, looking at our challenges, obviously, the one that came up over and over again is state law, how it is different than North Dakota. And so there were little bits of what those little pieces were that created the challenges, and then also, but a lot had to do on more a positive side. What are our strengths going forward and building on those strengths? Because that's the solution. Can't change state law. So anyway, thank you, Jenny, for the time and effort you three put together in bringing that. And I look forward to more of those roundtables. I think they're very healthy. Later that afternoon, I hosted coffee with the Food Commission out in Dilworth at the Roasted Rail House, which I had never been to before, and there was about 8 of us that showed up, including Commissioner Gross, and I thank you for coming. New things for me that came through that was new executive director with Farm in the Dell, working with kids with disabilities on a vegetable farm, a CSA that they have out there, getting more information from her. My wife Carol was growing together community gardens throughout, mainly in the Fargo area right now. Also Noel for our extension department. City of Moorhead passed backyard chicken ordinance a week ago, and we just had further conversation about that, and which potentially led to looking at maybe we'll address as a county in our zoning, maybe an amendment that may come forward in regard to backyard chickens. Right now, I understand it that in Clay County, you have to have 2 acres or more to have any backyard chickens. And so we may look at reducing that size. And in Moorhead right now, it'd be 60 chickens on any city lot. Also, a good presentation by Great Plains Food Bank coordinator Janice. She brought out awareness for me anyway about Great Plains mobile drops in the county in places like Ulen and Barnesville and elsewhere. So that was just good to hear distribution. So that was a big piece of what we talked about. On Thursday, I was at the Soil and Water meeting. I guess the one thing I'll just bring awareness to, we had a individual on the board for a couple of years that it came out that this individual did not reside in the area that he was elected for. So they had a resolution, and to that following state statute, that this board seat would be vacated, which it was immediately. And then also at the same time, the board had the right per state statute to reach out and appoint a new supervisor who does live in that district. And there was an appointment made to Richard Meinholt, who was the past supervisor for the district, who had been on 4 years prior. Richard comes with a lot of background and served us well during that time, so I think it was a very appropriate pick. And Richard will start up right away. And
I think it's also probably fair to say that he also had run
Yes,
for that,
thank you.
for
Thank
that
you for
seat
that.
at the time, and having followed the requirements that seat would need based on the person who also ran not living within the district.
Right. Yeah, and that was probably the main things I brought away. I did mention to the board how the city of Moorhead had presented that surface water management plan to us, last meeting, and they identifying 48 activities, and that kind of stuck in my mind. So I just, one more time, wanted to reach out, make sure that the Solon Water Board knew about this plan, and maybe they should hook up with Mike Pritchard, and maybe there was some more activities they could start doing jointly. With that, that's my report.
Thank you. Jenny?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have 2 weeks of report. The prior week, I attended the MetroCog Policy Board meeting. It was a special meeting to address the compensation for the job offer for the new director. That individual did accept the position, will be moving up from the Rochester area. Will start at the end of April here. Again, I've said before, Cindy Gray has led that organization in such a great capacity. Glad there's some time for overlap before she goes on to enjoy some well-earned retirement. I attended the Planning Commission meeting last week. We did have 2 items on the agenda. One was a request for an amendment to an interim use permit that included some mining that was approved, a pretty straightforward issue on that. The second was a petition for a text amendment that will be coming to this county board. The applicant was petitioning to amend the text of the code to allow for an auto, truck, trailer, garden, and farm equipment sales within the Ag Service Center district. Again, a long conversation on that. Really does seem to fit within needs that we're hearing within the community, while also like I said, if we upgrade the business code or the code, then we're able to permit any requests that do come forward. So there still is an element of control in that, but really does seem to fit within some of the needs that we're hearing throughout the county. We had one more interim use permit that was pulled from the agenda, and then we did talk about the bylaws amendment. This board had discussed in terms of representation, wanting to make sure in the bylaws it's noted that we had a representative from Eastern and Western Clay County. A lot of the issues that we see at the county or at the Planning Commission really do kind of fall within the Beach Ridge, so it did make sense to have something, maybe someone appointed from east of 9, and then because the valley does have its own challenges, someone west of 9. There was a really, really long conversation about that. There was concern from the city of Moorhead representative that they'd be, because we're removing a Moorhead Township from the wording, that it would be taking away from the city of Moorhead. And should we add a member from just, would it be simpler to add a member from an incorporated city and add another member from a rural city? I had relayed that this board really did want it in wording, that we maintain that while there will be appointments from all over the different requirements, it will just ensure that there'll be someone from Eastern and Western County area. Not sure that message really got, they asked us to have more dialogue with staff and bring it back. I think I understand the nature in which we did that. It was not to silence a voice or take representation away from anyone. It was just to ensure that while we make those appointments, you're having as broad of geographic representation throughout the county as possible. Representing Southern Clay County, I hear a lot about how people in southeastern Clay County feel like they're West Becker and they're not heard. And I said that having that in writing would be to help address those concerns and going forward, make sure that they're represented. So if you have more to say on that, I'd be happy to have conversations with you. Certainly can talk to Matt about, we're meeting again tonight. Yes.
Commissioner Mojo,
Yes.
can I, and we had that discussion, and I think I was one of the ones who brought that up here, that I thought it was important distinguish some of the rural representation on the planning commission be from both east and the west. And there's an awful lot of things that the planning commission doesn't hear, a lot of things that are happening within incorporated cities. They're hearing things outside of those incorporated cities, and they're involved, and it has impact on a lot of those landowners. Now, certain policies or something certainly can have an impact on incorporated cities such as Moorhead. But and again, as a county commissioner, I hear it often. Oh, it's almost like the imperial western half of the county versus the rest of the county, and that they don't have a say. And there's nothing wrong with having that makeup of the board, and I continue to support that and think it should be done.
And I think some of the conversation was because you're taking Oakport Township and Moorhead Township out, I understand how that looks. I think it's also important for people to know that as the city of Moorhead proper has grown and annexed Oakport, the amount of people in those two townships are dwindling, and a lot of them have really served in a multitude of capacity. And at some point, sometimes you just don't want to volunteer all the time. Not that we're not continuing to take their needs into account, but that's where it gets challenging. So making sure that it maybe isn't a township officer from east of 9 and west of 9, that it's a resident. We do have township officers that do serve on that board. And to our vice chair, Joel Hildebrandt, who serves, his position is through the SWCD, said yes, we've had, I, as a citizen, have had several permit applications come to the Clay County, or the commission, and it's been helpful to have city residents because they do offer a perspective, and it has been helpful to have rural representation because they do have perspective. The city of Barnesville and the city of Moorhead do have their own planning commissions, and they're, most of the requests that from their jurisdictions do go to those boards. So it's challenging, but we'll figure it out. The next day, I attended the Minnesota Business Roundtable. I just want to say that we had rescheduled that. That was the third time's the charm because of the weather. Shannon and her team at the chamber were fantastic in making the connections. We did have a representative from Deed there, so he was feverishly jotting down the comments. So thanks to Shannon and Mayor Carlson for being my co-host in that, and my two colleagues, Dave and Paul, for attending as well. The hope of that is to listen. And I've said many times in this capacity that it's really hard to advocate for things that I don't hear about, and making sure that we had a platform for business owners in Clay County to come and highlight what the opportunities are and where the challenges exist. And so many times we hear about them several times down the way, but it's important to hear directly from them where their challenges are. That's why I had commented a little bit on the licensure piece. We all know it, but it doesn't just affect citizens who are taking their 16-year-olds to get their driver's license. It affects the businesses and the hiring culture, and it's so often we do complain about how the laws are challenging, and we get that, but we need to be a collective voice in how do we mitigate those challenges going forward. So again, hopeful that that can be something that we do a couple times a year. That's something that Shannon had done with her previous position, was to have those conversations. So thank you for those that attended. And I also attended the Clay SWCD meeting last week. That was covered quite well by Commissioner Krabnoff. And again, I said during their presentation, but I worked a lot with landowners who were either needing help with ditches or needing to get a hold of sandbags. And thank you so much to all of the staff that has done a phenomenal job with coordinating and collaborating and getting the deputies who are delivering sandbags to the contractors who have trucks full of sand waiting for the calls for citizens that needed to get sand. There are some wrinkles in the process, but really do feel like our staff did such a great job, so thank you for that. That concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Ellen?
Thank you. Just maybe a follow-up to Commissioner Mojo's report on that meeting that you had with the area businesses. Is there going to be some sort of a recap of the issues that were raised by those businesses so that all of us can have access to those to help? You know, there are certain things that are beneficial from border cities legislation and all those types of things, but you know, something then that all of us can be collectively looking at to see how we can go after with one voice.
Yeah, the chamber was taking notes as well, and I believe the executive director of Eventide said the same thing. We want to make sure that we're encapsulating all the concerns and what do we not lobby for, but have conversation with the state leadership on. And so the chamber will be putting something out, and I believe you're on the email list for that. If not, I'll make sure and forward it to our administrator so that you can all receive it.
Thank you. All right, so my reports, I start off on April 11th. We had a development code update meeting. It's time to update our development code again, and Matt presented to us. He's gone out and solicited from SRF the costs involved with doing that long-range plan, and I, you know, so we got those numbers. I think Steve, is Matt going to be coming before us?
I believe Matt will be here next week with updated information.
Okay. Well, one of the things that obviously those costs, it was suggested on different ways that could be paid for, and I think we're looking at upwards of $90,000 that could be going towards this complete redevelopment, just based on different phases. What proposals that would be there, and my one of the things was could we use ARPA money and these other things, and I just felt that anytime that we deal with something that's of a development code like this, that you do it and it's for several years, that rather than incorporating into any 1 year type of access to funds, that's a perfect reason why we should be using reserve funds to cover that, because it's so benefiting over a long period of time. So, and then we'll talk more about that. That was really the topic of discussion, was the cost associated with that. That would then also, for example, in our ARPA money, it would leave that money available for other important things that might be more short-term related as opposed to long-term. Then on the 11th, we also had a Diversion Authority Planning Committee meeting, and really what the majority of that conversation was about the recreational task force development that they're looking at. Years ago, MetroCog did a study on what different things could be done from a recreational standpoint. And so we had quite a discussion on who should be on that task force and what entities, and so that it's just a continued conversation on that. Then we also gave an update on our Minnesota lobbying efforts that are going on. We talked about you know, the request of $60 million, was formally introduced. And then there was some flood forecast information that was available at that meeting as well. On April 12th, we had a regional dispatch budget and finance committee meeting. We went over the 2022 budget, and the final 2022 budget had about 580,000, I think, round numbers in revenues over expenditures. And that then just goes into a reserve, basically goes into a reserve fund. And got an update on our 2023 year-to-date budget that, you know, is kind of falling in line so far with what was projected. And then we had some, Mary was asking about, because this whole process has changed now within the dispatch, and there is a formal budget committee that has elected people, which didn't really have before, and what some of the processes, how that will change. And then there was also a change to the fiscal agent. The fiscal agent for the dispatch used to be the city of Fargo. And as you know, when we redid the new JPA, that request was to move that to Cass County. And I think that was to be effective June 30th. And based on some legalities and technicalities that I don't need to get into the weeds on here, there was a recommendation that fiscal agent be moved to December 31st or January 1st of 2024. And our budget committee voted to move that forward to the full board, and then I'll talk about that based on the full board's meeting next. And so then on the 13th, we did have the Triple RDC Authority Board meeting. The biggest news that we have on that is we got shocking news that the site that we had planned for, there is a significant amount of fill, and the estimates that we had on removing that was $950,000 just to remove that fill. And so that then right away shifted us to, for that kind of money, we felt that it was significantly important to start looking at other sites. And again, this is a site that would be just to the east of the new Sanford Hospital that's out there on I-94. So we are looking at 3 other sites. One of the sites is going to be in the vicinity of where the Cass County Jail is currently at. There's another site that Fargo owns in the industrial park, which would be up on that, say on the North Dakota side, it's 12th Avenue North, up in the industrial park area. And then another site that they have some property on right now is where Fargo is building a new fire station out on 60th Avenue South. So we're now looking at those 3 sites as additional options. And we asked our executive director and others to bring forward more information on those sites for our next meeting. It certainly was discouraging to get that news when we had put so much effort into that site and location, and Commissioner Ebring may want to follow up on that with his report as well. And then we did, as I mentioned, we talked about the fiscal agent, and then the board, just because of the terminology that's within the JPA on that fiscal agent, the Triple RDC board just authorized to work with legal to come up with the appropriate way to move forward with that adjusted date based on the current JPA. So it'll certainly get done. So I think that pretty much covers that. And then that same day, I went to Fergus Falls for a Lakes Country Service Cooperative meeting. I had missed the March meeting, and that March meeting was, of course, the difficult one where the decision was made on the discontinuing the YES program. And so with that, there was some actions based on some of the teachers that were involved there, that we granted some unrequested leave of absences for those folks. And then also, the board did vote to have a 4% COLA for all of the employees in Lakes Country Service Cooperative. That certainly coincides with what we've done here. One of the things, Lakes Country does not have a grid, a pay grid, so their increases are based annually on the COLA. That's where they're at right now, so. And there was some discussion about the different health insurance renewals, and, obviously, Clay County left them here not too long ago because of the direct quote that we got from Blue Cross. But so there's some other school districts and counties and city governments that are looking at coming in, and a few that are looking at leaving. So, but they're anticipating an increase in contracts for that year starts July 1st, is it, Darren? I think it's July 1st. Their year starts, or June 1st. And then we did get some updates from our executive director, Jeremy Kovash, on legislative things that are going on that could really benefit Lakes Country. And that concludes my report.
Mr. Chairman, Wednesday, the 12th, I also attended the Chamber's Minnesota Business Roundtable. I don't want to underrepresent Commissioner Mojo's contribution to that. She, Mary Carlson, and Shannon Full from the Chamber basically were the presenters and moderators for the whole thing, and did a very good job. I think we were all pleased. Without getting too far in the weeds, one of the things I heard repeatedly was an optimism that you just don't, we have not heard around here in the business community since I moved here 16 years ago. Very positive. There were great comments made about the city of Moorhead's willingness to work with business, which is sort of the opposite of what I heard most of the time I worked there, was that the business leadership didn't feel supported by city staff. That's no longer the case. There was a lot of positive feedback on that. And I think, given our challenges we've got working with a different set of rules than our neighbors to the west, this was good to hear the optimism that was expressed in the room there. I think bodes well for what we're doing. The Chamber has done a great job. I went up for their Moorhead Clay Day at the Capitol last year. I was unable to attend this year. I encourage the county to stay engaged with that. It is a great way to represent our county when, in the case of the meeting I went to, 17 people walk in the room and say we're from Clay County and the municipalities within, and you're dealing with legislative leadership, and they look and they took notice. One of the problems we have is dealing with a lot of the legislature that thinks we're sort of sitting out here, 40 to 60,000 people somewhere out in rural Minnesota and outstate, and they don't realize we're part of the second largest metro in the state. And getting that across has been a challenge, and I think we're making good headway on it. They're going to continue with the roundtables, and I think it's encourage everybody to attend and participate in that. Later that day, I attended the Moorhead Business Association's meeting at the American Legion. Leanne Wallen from Moorhead Police Department was presenting out there, representing the Youth and Family Services Unit that she's the head of, or one of the coordinators on it. Talked about Citizens Police Academy, the DARE program, school resource officers, the Summer Youth Program, which is coming up before you know it. And that's a great program. I encourage people with young kids to look into it and participate in it, but you got to do it quick because it fills up in no time. And also the police volunteer program. And it's just good to see these things not only still going, but in many cases advancing beyond where we were at when I left the department 5 years ago now. Thursday, 13th, I attended the Greater Fargo-Moorhead EDC executive meeting. We had a representative from Brady Martz reference the 2022 audit. You got to love it when you're in a room full of bankers. Normally, the audit presentations are sort of at 10,000 feet. This got down to about 500, and it was a very comprehensive presentation, but there are no surprises in the EDC's audit. We also discussed a $250,000 grant from the state of North Dakota, which I think is being overseen by Cass County, but the EDC is very active in where this money is going to be spent, and it's to attract manufacturing jobs to our area. And again, it's totally funded by North Dakota. It is one of the things we constantly deal with here, reflects back to the Business Roundtable. Our partners to the west get a lot of money from the state capital to encourage their businesses and job development, everything else, and not so much over here. So this is something that being partners with, having partners in North Dakota is a blessing and a curse at times, but there's a lot of good things happening over there, and I appreciate the EDC and the Chamber's efforts to try and make sure that we're a part of it. We continue to be in partnership with the businesses and the communities in Cass County. And Cass County commissioners have been very active at trying to make sure that we keep the partnership tight. There was a discussion on fueling our future too. There's an upcoming meeting between the two staffs. Also, an FM data and analytic team is being put together, which shows some promise, interesting stuff that they're going to try and pull down and have a data base that's available to all of us. Later that day, I attended the Red River Regional Dispatch Center Board of Authority. Commissioner Campbell did a good job of presenting what we did cover there. A lot of the issues around the transition on who's going to be the fiscal agent for the triple RDC have to do with the software application that Cass County is going to have to get done before they can actually take that on. So it's, that's going to put it off till probably the first of next year. On the facility site update, it was very disappointing to find out that site preparation there was an expectation that triple RDC handle the cost of that, which is close to $1 million. The soil that's on the site that we were looking at Sanford is the entire waste soil that was removed when they were building their new hospital. And our assumption was the site would be prepped. It isn't, and we can't add $1 million to the cost. So I think we've got a great plan B, maybe even preferable, although you hate to lose a business partner in this. The needs Sanford is determined to build a dispatch center for their use is no longer present. So property that Cass County and/or Fargo owns, the 3 sites, all of them look promising. And the executive committee, which consists of the police chiefs, fire chiefs, the actual leadership of the agencies that are served, is going to get a good crack at looking at this and make sure it meets our operational needs. And I'm sure we will be able to get this thing back on track and construction underway in a reasonably good time. And that completes my presentation.
Okay, Wednesday I attended the Rise Watershed Board. There, the main thing was a public hearing they held where a person wants to put in some drain tile and not drain into a ditch, he wants to drain it across the neighboring farm's land. And it was a big concern from the neighboring farmers, so I don't know how they're gonna eventually come out on that one. Also Wednesday evening, I attended the food distribution of food that Paul talked about, and just amazed at the amount of food that Great Plains is driving around the county and distributing to all the different towns. So a lot of food's been distributed to people, and it's just a good program. Thursday, Beyond the Yellow Ribbon, a few things that took out of that was I guess they're looking to put in a mural on the outside of the Air Museum, and the other thing was that the VFW in Dilworth has been sold, so the meetings, that's what I think this week, they're moving out of there, so our further meeting, for your information, is that it's going to be held at the Legion in Moorhead. So also going out several times with water concerns this week. And just want to thank Justin Sorum for the immediate response he's been taking on my request, and it's been good working with him. Other than that, we're going to talk about that water district.
Sure, Mr. Chair, I have a few different things here, but we could certainly start out with that discussion. If you recall, back on March 28th, we had representatives from AE2S, from Flannery and Hood Law, legal services attorneys, and also representatives from Polk, Norman County. At that discussion, they talked about the West Central Water District and our willingness as a county to be involved in that. There's a series of questions that this board had for, specifically for Mr. Marks, in regards to the process as a whole. And prior to making any decisions, the request was that we would have some additional information. Mr. Marks, we had a challenging time, I guess, to set up a time between Brian, myself, and Mr. Marks. And so Mr. Marks finally just provided a written remarks based on your concerns and questions. And so it's broken down into a few separate areas. I think the first concern that you had at the board was from a liability standpoint. What would we potentially be on the hook for? And I think based on the information they provided and reviewing the comments, I think we have two areas that we're looking at. Number one, they spoke about the cost of the formation of the district. That could be anywhere from $150,000 to $300,000 in additional legal fees for the judicial process. And so in the event that how the statute reads right now is that that cost is provided by the courts. I think in our discussion with Mr. Melton, I think there's probably a very good likelihood that the courts may go through that process, but then ultimately would pass that on to the participants. And the concern that was addressed that day was in the event that this was brought forward and that $300,000 was paid for services in the judicial, the judge decided not to approve it, we would then, as a county, be responsible for that. I think we both agree the likelihood of it not being brought forward, approved, based on how the statute reads, there's a good chance there's a very good chance that it would, it's most likely going to, would most likely be approved. Having said that, there's that possibility, which then the county would have, I guess, a responsibility to pay a portion of that. Now, we haven't had any ongoing discussions with Norman or Polk County in regards to this, but based on the population numbers that they discussed, Clay County would be about 15% of that. Again, we would have to have ongoing discussions if that is the right number. But so if it was the maximum amount, that would be roughly $45,000 the county would be responsible for. Anything else, Brian, on that?
No, I would just agree everything Steve said. I as he stated, we weren't able to link up with Mr. Marks, but I think the information he provided is accurate. I looked at Minnesota Statute 116A. I think establishes how it would be out there, and the fact that the judicial branch would be initially responsible. I expect, just from our own experience of working when we've done courtrooms and everything else, they would likely seek to ask the county for some reimbursement. So I think the board should expect that, and so, as Steve stated, likely our percentage would be based on that, our population that would be getting served. So I think a $45,000 fee would be, at a max, would be something that the board would be looking at. But I mean, I think it's reasonable to expect just that the judiciary branch, although based on the way the statute says that they're responsible initially, they would likely look to pass that on to the people that are getting served by the water district. So I thought that was, again, something that's reasonable. And then the other piece was cost, and I'm sure Steve was going to move into that one. The legal fees currently are being paid all by Norman County, although Mr. Marks points out and says his understanding is that Norman County intends to continue that. I think it's reasonable to expect that if each county signed on, there are 3 counties, that Norman County would then ask for a percentage, and I think it would be reasonable based on that same population equation would be something that would be reasonable. So I would expect Norman County, just based on how budgets and everything else go, they're looking to do that to get things moving initially, but I would expect if we signed on, they would ask for a percentage.
The second question, or one of the other questions that you had, was a governance question. I think that Mr. Marks cited a number of different water districts in the county. All of them are based off, again, Minnesota Statute 116A. That they would be looking to appoint. If you look at, if the resolution that they provided actually highlights that there would be a seven-member board. Based on that 7-member board, at 15%, we would have 1 vote of the 7 votes. So, again, some of that governance piece would have to be established, but based on the resolution that has been signed by the other 2 counties, it is a 7-member board. And I think that concludes, the questions that you had asked that I'm aware of. If there's any other follow-up, I would note that I did receive correspondence from AE2S that they did Norman County, Felton, and also Climax submitted for federal dollars, community public funding through Congresswoman Fishbach's submission. Norman County is in for $5.3 million. Felton is in for $3.4 million. And through Klobuchar and Smith, 5.3, 3.4, and Climax is 1.1 million. With the understanding that that process is, now it goes to the Senate subcommittees, and they'll be making their decision at a later time. But these projects did get selected at least to be evaluated further from a funding standpoint.
Are you done with your?
And I think ultimately the main point was, I think based on just review and the legal review side of things, I don't see any other issues. Whether there's issues that you ultimately want to discuss in regard to board makeup, that kind of thing, that would be something. But my recommendation, or our recommendation, would be to have the board bring it back onto the agenda for next week's agenda. I don't see any other issues unless there's anything else you want us to look at, but he was able to answer the questions, I think, pretty thoroughly, and just the review of 116A, I would say it seems to comport with those issues that we've already addressed. So.
Okay. Paul?
And maybe this will be for next week, but, so we do have cities sign, well, at least one, Felton, right, signing on to this, right, that are requesting and funding.
Georgetown also.
Georgetown, excuse me. Felton had interest, is that what it was?
So Georgetown and Felton have signed on.
Thank you, okay. So, but the other piece of it is the lines that perhaps would run throughout the rural area is another piece of consideration. Are we looking at all in one or separately? I mean, I guess that could be further discussion, but your thoughts?
I guess just to clarify your question, Commissioner Kravinoff, are you talking about the entire county of
Well,
Clay?
no, the designated area that they had talked already to, the coming down roughly our third northern part, right? And so I guess just trying to look at the economics of everything, I think it's an easy call when you look at a community, that is going to use a lot more water, but when it comes to individual sites and those lines going out, it'd sure be good to somehow get a grasp of what those costs would be if those lines start going out, and truly how many citizens are truly interested in that. I don't know how we do that, a survey or a call, who knows, but I do know full mitigation systems in the homes cost about $2,500, and but I don't know what type of well problems other than arsenic these people in the northern reach are having with their wells.
Well, I think during the presentation, they touched on that a little bit. I think part of the tough part to answer your question is it somewhat depends on how many people along that line want to join, and I think the larger the numbers, the lower the cost, and so I don't think they were able to provide us a real solid answer on that.
You were done with your report?
Well, I'm done with this topic unless you guys have any additional questions.
No. You've got more.
I got some more if there's no
Okay,
other
good.
questions. Otherwise, if it's the board's wishes, then we would bring that resolution forward next week. Is that
I think that'd be a good idea.
all right? Last Tuesday, I participated in the development code discussion that Commissioner Campbell spoke about, and he touched on ARPA funding. I would just note that we've had some ongoing discussion going back to last year, where we have our remaining ARPA dollars, which we have about $400,000. And last fall, we were notified that under ARPA, through the U.S. Department of Treasury Local Assistance and Tribal Consistency Fund, we received an additional $50,000 in 2022 and $50,000 in 2023, with the understanding it was directed towards PILT, with the understanding we received PILT dollars, but there hasn't been a lot of adjustments in PILT dollars to counties since 2005. And so this was a one-time or a two-time payment. Having said that, the parameters on the spending is pretty vast, any governmental purpose really. And so that's some additional dollars that we'll continue to have discussions on.
Excuse me, are you saying that that's an increase in our pill payments we're receiving?
No, it was a one-time payment, or a two-time $100,000 payment with the intent of PILT from the federal government.
In our MRC meetings, they're talking about pill payments not being sufficient, so.
Yes.
I was just wondering whether
And so that was the federal government's way to try to fill that gap on a one-time piece. On the 12th, they had county management. We did a rural cities recap. We talked about the inclement weather policy. We talked about the upcoming management retreat. That is Thursday at the Law Enforcement Center. Starts at, registration's at 8:30, 9 o'clock start. We're looking forward to that. We talked about proper FMLA notification to HR, ensuring when we have employees that are out for 3 days or longer, and or do 1 day in a hospital, that they notify human resources. The 12th, they also participated administrator touch base from our administrators in Cass County, Moorhead, West Fargo. Talked about budgets and also some of the Red River Regional Dispatch issues that have been addressed already. On the 13th, we had a Strive for Excellence meeting. We prepped for our meeting. We talked about our leadership discussions. Jackie also shared some of the ideas that she's going to be bringing forward from a communication standpoint. On the 13th, we had a detox discussion. Gertz is moving forward, but now with the approval of the project with contracts, and so we had some meetings just to clarify a few odds and ends. Friday, I participated in the MACA legislative update. I think today during the board meeting, you all actually probably received a request from AMC to send our legislators information in regards to comprehensive transportation plan and also probation funding. Those are two items that they've been concerned about. The probation funding, for example, came in about half of what the request was. And so there's some challenges there. And so AMC is looking at for support from our counties to provide letters on those two areas. So I don't know if the board's wishes, I could work with Jackie after the meeting today to send those letters.
Well, I think they're asking for individual letters too, so I think it's important probably as a full board to send those, and I know that AMC had sent parameters, but I know there was a call on the Transportation Alliance one yesterday, and so I think we got from MRC, Frank, so, encourage individually all of you to send those if able today.
The probation issue is one that we keep fighting, and there's got to be, to submit it at half of what's been asked is to continue with the problem. So I would encourage that a full board meeting be sent, and I'm going to send my own.
Just some other updates from that legislative session. Continue to work with the CP and LGA. I reported earlier during the legislative session there was a bill that it had an increase of about 58% to counties. That's now down to 37%, which is still a substantial increase from previous years, but that adjustment is still being considered. Also, just to make aware, currently extended voting or early voting right now, we have one Saturday prior during elections where we have our facilities open for voting. There's legislation right now that's looking to extend that to 3 Saturdays and also 1 Wednesday. And so AMC is working to try to get funding for that through the legislature. Paid Family Leave and Medical Act, we haven't seen any significant changes. They're still looking to designate who really is included in that, family members. They're also trying to, try to have it coincide more with FMLA regulations also. And cannabis bill is going to be on the House Senate floor very shortly here. Unfortunately, there's been no meaningful ongoing revenue source discussions there. So again, just kind of touch base, an extended appreciation of the Sheriff's Department and the Highway Department, whether they went from blizzard to flood fight all in about 3-day span. And so their communication to, I think, all of us has just been excellent this year, and so we appreciate that. Just a few follow-ups from earlier today. You asked, I think Commissioner Campbell asked about medical assistance. What was the makeup of the 17,351 people? Families and children make up 11,371. Disabled persons, 1,686. Elderly, 852. And adults with no children, 3,442. So, wanted to pass that along. You also probably got an email. The drug court graduation will be tomorrow from 1:30 in courtroom 4. We touched base on the management retreat on Thursday. Pollinator night, soil and water has been moved due to weather to next Tuesday from 4 to 7 p.m. And then some significantly good news for Clay County is Senator Klobuchar has moved forward the substance use project and to the Senate Appropriations. We found out on Sunday, and so we are notified that we'll find out if we are selected by the end of June or early July. That concludes my report.
Okay. Brian, thank you so much for working on that water district thing, and appreciate it. You got any addition to add? Jackie? Nothing about family or anything you want to talk about? Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have one additional thing that I was just brought up, or I received an email. 2 weeks ago, I gave a report on Commissioner Ebbering and I had met regarding the Southeast Reach 4 on the diversion project. And just to kind of summarize it a little bit again, then I'll say what most recently is going on here is Holy Cross Township had requested to have access over the southern embankment on 150th and 170th Avenue South. And the Corps basically had rejected those for multiple reasons. They had a number of bullet reasons why. When we met with them, I made a proposal on one of them that I thought was reasonable, which would be a slight alignment in the project, which would eliminate a bump out and make that road accessible to go over. And so, with that in mind, the Corps right now is about 35% done on that design. And now is the time to be talking about that. One of the situations, if Holy Cross is opposed to that and they don't sign the MOU with the Corps and the Diversion Authority, then it could end up being into a legal situation where we could be asked then to take over those two roads and then have to go through a vacating process. And it's all quite cumbersome. So anyway, if I could just read this, because this is something that I've been asked for permission for Chris Bachikard to send to the Corps. And it basically says, and this is addressed to Terry at the Corps, as you are aware, we've been working with Holy Cross Township on an MOU for construction of the flood diversion project. One of the township's requests was to add crossings of the southern embankment at 150th and 170th Avenue South. We shared our Corps' response to the township's request and are waiting for further input from the township. Well, it's my understanding they obviously still wanted the crossings. So.
Yeah, and just to comment on that, I have been in communication with them. And
okay, so, and then we could follow up. So then, in the meantime, Joel and I met with Commissioners Campbell and Ebinger with the Clay County Commission to discuss potential options at these crossings from the county's perspective. During this discussion, Commissioner Campbell asked Joel and I to investigate whether we could make a slight adjustment to the alignment of Southeast 4 near 150th Avenue South to provide the additional space needed to construct a crossing of the southern embankment at that location. By doing that, that would eliminate a few of those bullet points that the Corps said why they were opposed to it. And again, this is Chris Bachikard's message that he's asking for permission to go forward with. I had Adam Rude look into this, and the drawing attached represents what that option could look like. From our conversation with Clay County Commissioners, they indicated that they would support providing one additional crossing of the embankment at 150th Avenue South and then leaving the 170th Avenue South closed. They also offered to assist the Diversion Authority in our negotiations with the townships for this plan as well. So the Diversion Authority's request today is to ask for the additional crossing at 150th Avenue South based on the alignment attached. If you would like to discuss this further, Commissioner Campbell has offered to meet, and this is them asking the Corps to meet to share their thoughts and reasonings for the additional crossing. So I'm hopeful, and I know Commissioner Mosher, you've said, you've had some conversation with Holy Cross. I'm hopeful that maybe this effort, and if the county stands by our position that we want to see 150th open, that maybe we can work together with Holy Cross where they would sign this MOU and avoid an awful lot of additional things that might have to happen from the county perspective later. But Chris sent me this draft this morning asking me and I'm going to tell him to send it because ultimately, again, they're in the process of this design and days can make a difference.
Yeah, another aspect to keep in mind, I think Kevin brought this up last time we discussed it. This is elimination of at least 1 mile of access road. It allows, also facilitates some of the concerns they had from some of the farmers on the other side with the additional 2 or 3 miles they'd have to take their equipment. This addresses that, opening up this one location, and it eliminates the need to use half to a third of the access road that was going to have to be constructed to facilitate this. So it's kind of a win-win.
So anyway, I just wanted that update that, you know, Dave and I are kind of negotiating as commissioners, trying to assist Holy Cross the best that we can. The 170th Avenue that they wanted, you know, we didn't really have anything to go against those bullet points that the Corps has said as to why they need to keep that one closed. So, anyway, that's kind of where we're at on that, and I just wanted to be aware, and so hopefully that'll help move this process forward, and certainly Commissioner Mojo's in contact with Holy Cross Township, and if they want to discuss it with us, that's, I'd be more than willing to meet with them on that as well, but we need to try to do something on this to keep this thing moving forward, so.
Can you forward that to Steve so Steve can send to myself, please?
Pardon me?
Can you forward that letter to Steve and then I can get it from him?
Yes. So, and again, this was basically sent to me in draft form, which they're asking me for approval of, which I'm gonna tell them to go ahead on, you know, but yes, I can do that.
Anybody else? We're adjourned.